Hey, everybody, it's Chad and Ace from the Turnbuckle Tavern. We're going to get into this CM Punk Elite Backstage Brawl, the news of it, the shoot work of it. I think we all know it's a shoot, but we'll get into that. We're going to get into the possible fallout of it. If you want to support the channel, just go to theturnbuckletavern.com. It'll take you to everything we got. But Ace, lay it on the line for me. Let's start at the beginning here. Give me some facts and let's get into this.
All right, so following the main event, great match with Jon Moxley to close out All Out. Punk really showed, because lost in all of this is the pay-per-view that happened on Sunday.
Yeah.
Great match. Punk becomes champion. Then we had that media scrum. I happened to be in the car on the way back, and I think Marco texted in the group, "Are you guys watching this?" And I was like, "No, not yet. I was going to watch it later." We tuned in, and there was Punk in the middle of his diatribe, going all in, and he wasted no time. He started originally with Colt Cabana, dismissing rumors, talking about these non-credited journalist sources, and eventually went in on everybody and anybody that has, I guess, talked about this, and that included people by name. Hangman Page was called an empty-headed fuck. He said the EVPs, the Young Bucks, they were, quote, not in Reseda anymore, unquote, and also they weren't fit to manage a target. So this continued for 15 to 20 minutes of him going off while Tony Khan sat awkwardly sipping water, nodding his head back and forth, looked very, very uncomfortable. So that was the media scrum. Probably, I think someone had said this was worth $50 along with the pay-per-view. So I guess before we get into the aftermath of everything that went down, I'll put the banner here about what exactly happened. Just what were your thoughts watching this live, this media scrum, and how did you feel like originally? Because we never see the transparency from wrestlers. It's usually done with barbs online. They don't mention people by name. Very rarely, if ever, people are put on blast in this direct way.
Man, I'll tell you what, it's been, what is this, Tuesday evening? That happened late Sunday night. Fellow Tavern member Sneed was at my house. We watched All Out together. And like you said, Marco sends the text. We tune into the scrum. We're standing out on my porch watching this scrum. My immediate gut reaction, and you can ask Sneed, we were both standing there. The first thing that came to my mind is you got to fucking fire this guy. Like he's making a fool of Tony Khan, who's, like you said, was sitting right next to him, awkwardly sipping water. He's burying the guys, kind of the foundational guys of the company, the Bucks, especially the Bucks and Omega. But Hangman was there from day one, right, part of that crew. I didn't have so much of a problem with him going in and on Colt Cabana. That was the part, yeah, it wasn't professional, but that didn't bother me. The thing that really bothered me was going in on the EVPs and Hangman and burying those guys in a public setting like that. And me and Sneed were like, dude, you got to get rid of this guy. If this is how it's going to be, you can't let him tear your company down. Then on Monday, my mind kind of changed a little bit where I was seeing a little bit of what he said. And I'm like, hey man, if you're getting trash talked constantly in the press for the better part of a decade about the whole Colt Cabana situation, and you finally buck back and say it in a public forum, I kind of was like, okay, I get that. We don't know the situation. We don't know the truth. We're fans. We're being fed what we know from those people. Now we're hearing it from one of the horse's mouths. So I started to see a little bit of Punk's points, although I was still leaning in this is unprofessional. And I didn't like how he went after the EVPs. But on the same token, I don't like how Hangman kind of went into business for himself either. So I was kind of seeing the sides of both. Then I went into the whole, well, if they turn this into a work, if they turn this real situation into something that can make money, they could, that age-old wrestling phrase, they could turn chicken shit into chicken salad if they do that. So that's kind of where I stand right now. I think the only way positively out of this is to make it an on-screen money-making angle. I don't think this is something that you can just apologize and move on without addressing this in story form on your weekly television. If they don't address it in weekly story form, you got to fucking shit can Punk. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with the Colt Cabana thing. I did appreciate the directness of just addressing it head on, because this has been an underlying thing. People were discussing about how Punk feels about it, how's it like working with him. I appreciate that. Where he lost me was what he did with Hangman Page and the Bucks, like you mentioned, because at the end of the day, if you were not a fan of what he did in the Double or Nothing build-up, he was vague, and yes, he went into business for himself. Completely agree. But when you want to lead by example, you're an older guy that has all this experience. You learned under the learning tree of all these guys in WWE and Ring of Honor and these people that have come through the business. You should know better. You don't fight negativity with negativity, as he knows. We even saw that tweet people were quoting. I think Miro quote tweeted it and said he was laughing at it from when Sasha Banks and Naomi had walked out, and then he said, support your coworkers no matter if you disagree with them. So It just shows kind of how hypocritical Punk's been in the situation.
Hypocrisy.
Because he's been stuck on the quote from Hangman, even before he went into business for himself, where Hangman was asked in an interview, and I forget where it was from. He had said, I don't need to learn from anybody. I don't need to take advice from these older wrestlers. We kind of do it on our own way. And I'll get back to that in a second. But I want to look at it from Punk's perspective. And I'm not there, like you said, we're fans. Is he going under the learning tree of some of these guys? Because like the style or not, it has grasped a generation of wrestling fans in North America for, this is a second promotion for the first time since WCW left. Whether you agree with how the Bucks work or Kenny Omega or Hangman work, they've been doing their own thing for a bit. That's sort of the spirit of AEW. Is he willing to take advice from those guys the same way that he wants them to take advice from older guys and himself? I understand the frustration, but practice what you preach. That's where I stand here. Punk, look at Jericho as a leader in the locker room. I would be absolutely shocked if Jericho did this. And look at how Jericho, first of all, Jericho is a guy from the ground up, took a chance on AEW, came in to AEW before it was established. It's easy to come in now and want to change shit around. There was not even, like I mentioned in the group chat, there wasn't the tree was still standing with the wood being built for the boat. Punk, now they're out to sea. He's like rolled in on a fucking raft, and he's like all ready to change the way that the ship is decorated.
Well, speaking of the Scrum too, and Chris Jericho was on that Scrum later, and somebody asked them about that talent meeting that Tony Khan had, and Jericho was there, and Jericho spoke at that meeting. And one of the things Jericho spoke about was all the contention in the locker room. And he just said, hey guys, we have something special here. Don't fuck it up. We have the world at our feet. That's a leader. That's a locker room leader who's just trying to get everyone together on the same page. We have something special. We have the world at our feet. Don't muck it up with bullshit in the back. Now, with what you're saying about Punk, would he listen and take advice from the Elite and those type of guys? I think it's a two-way street, man. I'm with you. I think the problem with this is it's like Punk is putting himself in this veteran role, and you got, I know what's right. You got to listen to veterans like me. And maybe the Elite are kind of stuck in their ways and their indie ways. And maybe if they brought in a little bit of, advice from those legends, I think it's one of those things. There has to be a common ground. You have to learn from each other to make the best product. There's an age-old saying, there's no one way to skin a cat. You know what I mean? Like, you have to both kind of learn from each other and bring it all to the table to kind of make the company great. And that's what they've always said. It's a smorgasbord. We want a little bit of the Elite Young Bucks style. We want that old school storytelling style. We want Joshi. We want Lucha. We want all of this. So I don't know, man. It's so odd being on the outside and just kind of picking the pieces of what we've heard. But I think, I don't know. I think Punk is definitely in the wrong here. I think he's overstepped the bounds.
What really upset me was dismissing Hangman and the Young Bucks of never accomplishing anything. Punk sat on his couch for 8 years while this was being developed. He had the chance from the jump to be a part of this. And if you look at some reports, they say the tension had started with the Bucks and Punk in at All Out 2019 when they had called him and wanted him to come in and he didn't. Whether that's right or wrong, just know that that is sort of the seedlings that have established here. That this has grown into an absolute shit show because no one addressed it. No one sat down like adults. Both sides are not acting like adults. Let's just be clear here, because even though the Bucks are defending their friend Hangman, let's go to the fight and go everything that went down with that. Let's pull up a tweet here. So I want to talk about this first, and this was an interesting thing. And again, Stephen Mulhausen has been covering this. He was the one dropping the news about the altercation in the back. He was the guy that he was recording right in the front row. I don't think he asked any questions directly of Tony Khan or CM Punk, but this is not formally an update, but news on Tony Khan. He's really leaned on Tony Schiavone and been told he's now Khan's right-hand man. So Schiavone knows all about chaos when he was in WCW and should be a great person to lean on and be a sounding board on the Punk Elite altercation. So we'll get into the altercation in a second. Sort of a silver lining, being an ultimate optimist here. One thing that's grown from this is he has to really distribute some power and seek advice from guys that have been there in chaos. Tony Schiavone is going to be, he obviously is going to be talking at all times, but now it seems like Tony Schiavone is going to take on that role and be in that official capacity to help Tony Khan, I guess, steer through these rough waters.
What a great guy to lean on, because Tony's if you listen to his podcast and hear him talk, Tony is a very even-keeled, easygoing, rock. He's not a emotional guy who's going to act out of emotion. I feel like he's going to be a good consigliere for TK to kind of sit and hear everything out and see it from all sides. I think another guy in this situation that's going to be really important for Tony Khan to lean on is Jericho. Jericho is a very steady guy, and I think he's a very wise guy in that position. But this is a moment for Tony. This is the first true test of Tony Khan's leadership, and how he handles this situation is going to dictate how people take this company moving forward. I think this is a very, very important moment in Tony Khan's leadership that we have yet to see. Like, he could really come out being a true champion of all this, or he could make this company seem very, very weak.
He has a lot to do right now to make right. Because if I'm the Bucks, Omega, Hangman, he's sitting there nodding in agreement. So his silence was almost deafening in a lot of ways to CM Punk's little diatribe he had. And the only one that wins out of this are the fans, obviously, and fucking Mindy's Bakery, who I just posted here. Yeah. He's sitting there, first of all, munching on a cupcake or whatever, a pastry, in the most ridiculous way ever. And I think that played into a lot of people's, I guess, opinion of it being a work, because he seemed so disconnected from reality, for being honest. He seemed like he was playing a character, and I think someone said it. I don't want to not give them credit, but I forget who said it. They said it seems like an SNL skit. This seems like satire. Like, and this was a moment that seemed very serious, but he's also sitting there shoving cupcake in his face. So that also was like, what is this guy doing? Has he lost his mind? Is he concussed from the match?
It was super odd how he was laying it out, but I will say, I've been around some people, myself included, when you get on a rant, it's almost like he got revved up and it was just let him go. Like, it was almost like the more he ranted, the more he got revved up, and the more he just kept spewing it, where you're just wanting to grab him and be like, dude, like, settle down. You're going, he was truly off the rails here. Truly.
But what was the initiation of that? Because he walked in and we didn't see the beginning of the scrum. There was no question asked, allegedly. He just went in, asked one of the journalists, are you friends with Scott or Colt Cabana? And he said, whatever. And he said, well, you should disclose who your friends are. And they went off the races from there. It never really ended. Yeah, so at that moment, he was seeking conflict. Like, he went in seeking conflict.
If the video link you got, like the scrum that I watched, there was about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes cut off the front. Like, it starts and he's already kind of ramped up.
Yeah.
And I was listening to Brian Alvarez talk, like, there was no question from the media that instigated this. Like, Punk came in with this in mind. And he said, like, the first thing Punk said was something along the lines of, "Do you guys consider yourself journalists?" And then from there, like, he came in ready to address this. So obviously, like, something has been said in the press, and it's been bubbling with the Hangman thing, the Colt, because the Hangman thing too was stemmed out of the Colt thing. That's one piece we're missing here. When he went into business for himself, that it was alluded to where Colt was a part of Dark Order, became friendly with Hangman. Hangman took umbrage with the whole Colt being pushed into ROH. He was hot about it. He thought Punk was changing the environment of the locker room, said those veiled lines in that on-screen promo. Punk then got hurt, had to sit on the shelf for 2 to 3 months. And then immediately his first promo back, he goes off the rails and mentions Hangman, kind of burying a baby face, one of your
100%.
top baby faces. So I think all of that, the Hangman Colt relationship, all kind of led into this.
Yeah, if you feel like you're a leader in the locker room, and I think he identifies himself as one, you should act like it. If Hangman, you believe what he did was wrong, and I think it was wrong, you should be showing him how to do it by practicing what you preach. You shouldn't go out there and just throw a nuclear firebomb on a top babyface. He is a former world champion, and you knew he wasn't coming out. Would Terry Funk do that? Would Dusty Rhodes do that?
Right.
So would Bret Hart do that? Maybe Bret Hart would do it. But there is a lot to be said about practicing what you preach, and he's being hypocritical. The other thing that's in my mind here is everything that's been said about what's going on with after the fact. And we're going to get into the actual details, and you guys can see the scroll here with all the action that went back. Meltzer had said, the belief is that nobody involved in the fracas will be on TV tomorrow and that other top stars not booked originally for Wednesday will be there. A lot of talk of as suspensions, but that isn't official. If Punk's lucky, it will just be a suspension. Seems like Ace Steel at the very least needs to be fired because he bit Kenny Omega, as you guys can see scrolling here.
Yeah, let's break down the fight. Lay it out, Ace. Like, what exactly is, because I know the facts of everything that happened in the scrap, the backstage scrap, isn't being disputed from from either side. The only thing being disputed from either side is who started it. One side is saying the Bucks entered and Punk and Ace were defending themselves, and then the other one is that Punk started it all. So that's the only thing that's kind of being disputed by either side.
So following what Punk had said, he was approached by the Bucks, and rightfully so, in the arena for what was said, and they just wanted to have a conversation. And there was an altercation between Punk, the Young Bucks, early Monday, and the Bucks confronted Punk about his comments at the Scrum. It did get physical with Punk throwing punches at least one member of the Bucks. We do know now that Nick Jackson had a chair thrown at him, and Matt got punched in the eye. And then we got more details that we had Ace Steel biting Kenny Omega. So like you said, pulling his hair. So this had boiled over, and this is akin to everything that went down with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. We know
one little nugget too that I heard today from Meltzer and Alvarez. Another thing, whatever locker room they entered in, Ace Steel's wife was in that room as well, and she, I guess, was watching Larry, Punk's dog. And she had a broken foot, not from this situation, but she had a injured foot prior. So she was kind of hobbled. So when this melee broke out, there was a little more like danger even in that because she couldn't get out of the way. So she was witness to all this too. And I know there were other people there. Names haven't been said. I'm sure Brandon Cutler was probably in the room with them. But all of these people are being interviewed about what happened. What's your perspective on it? So
it seems like there's law enforcement involved as well, which is why the AEW officials couldn't address it right away. So it's deeper than just, oh, they had a conflict. I mean, in-house, this should be handled, but they've brought it to a fact that all the details are emerging. When you have people not involved in the company and people that are not involved in the situation, eventually all the details are going to be out there. So they do have to face it head on. And there's been conversation about, will they just ignore it and sweep it under the rug? When your top stars are not on TV, when you're a world champion who just won the title is not on TV, you have to address it. But looking at this tweet as well, Right now, AEW talent have not been told anything official. Almost all I've spoken to believe CM Punk will have to go or make major amends to remain with the company. A lot of talent haven't arrived where Dynamite is broadcasting from yet, but the heat on Punk is unreal. So, I mean, chances that Punk makes amends and crawls back on his hands and knees, that seems non-existent. So the other option is Punk has to be gone. He seems like the common denominator of the chaos. And if the locker room rallies behind him, we see guys, Miro did subtweet it. There's been a supportive contingent of people that do support Punk. It seems like it's just FTR, really. I mean, I haven't really heard any of the other people supporting, but
not with this. The only I know him and Mox have kind of been friendly in the past, but I've heard reports also. There's so many reports coming out, guys, that we apologize. You're hearing it from everywhere, but I also heard reports that a lot of his supporters who typically stand up for him in the company are not fans of this. So he might not have those FTR guys in his corner in a situation like this.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, and I'm not accusing him of this really feels like another homage to Bret Hart. I believe, and I said this jokingly, and this is only my opinion, and I don't know if the Tavern co-signs on this, so just take it as Stephen ACEFIELD has said this. I feel like he thinks he's Bret Hart, but he works like fucking Kid Cash in ECW. And Kid Cash was a good wrestler. You're not Bret Hart. At the end of the day, you can cosplay Bret Hart all you want. You can do finishes similar to Bret Hart. You're not even in the prime of your career right now. You were shown up by Hangman Page in that match. And whether people want to call it ring psychology or an old man getting his wheels under him, Hangman Page works circles around you.
Right.
And I feel like that may be at the core of this. And again, this is not proven. Punk's never said this. I think he felt embarrassed with how Hangman wrestled circles around him. Going 40 plus minutes in the ring is much different than Punk coming back and hurting his foot. And you want to talk about being a responsible leader, bro. He broke his fucking foot stage diving.
Right.
Talk about being a responsible leader. Think about the company. You have to be stage diving. I love that shit. I love it. But imagine if Hangman did that. Would he be burying Hangman in interviews? Like, oh, you have to think smarter.
Right. No. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I think he's 7 years away. You're in your mid 40s. You're not, like you said, you're not Bret Hart, bud.
He never was, though. But he never was. Let's be honest, what he was.
And that doesn't mean a whole lot. A lot of people aren't fucking Bret Hart.
But don't pretend you are, though. Like, he's creating this like drama to be Bret Hart. You know what I mean? Like,
Dax Harwood's more Bret Hart than
100%. But Dax also like wrestles in a very similar manner. Punk never did, and that's not who Punk is. Like, Punk's electrifying on the microphone. He also is he's drawn as a champion.
I don't think he's trying to be a Bret Hart He's never been the technical guy. I do think he's a Bret Hart mark who pulls things. I know he does the little moves that are kind of tip of the cap to old Bret Hart matches, but I see more of him. I see the Bret Hart in him of like,
he's cantankerous. Like that's exactly what it is.
The cantankerous kind of complaining, I think there's a part of him that looks to Bret's career outside the ring and the things that happen, and he tries to interweave those. And you said this is almost like a Bret Hart situation. This entire situation is kind of like the Montreal screw job. I think Marco from the Tavern called it the Chicago scrum job, which is a great line. But yeah, man,
let's put the icing on the cake, though. There's a report coming out, and we may get more details tomorrow, and Dave had said this, and Dave's been pretty credible. He was there in Chicago. He said there's talk about Punk possibly being hurt again. It's being speculated that Punk possibly tore his pec or injured something having to do with his bicep shoulder in the backstage altercation. Like, that's lost in all of this. He just won the world championship. They put him over huge, over Jon Moxley, who's been virtually unbeatable for a year, and now Punk's hurt again.
I think
who wants to talk about being selfish? Who wants to talk about being selfish?
You know what that smells like to me? And I think Anthony brought this up in the group chat, and I kind of co-sign it. That to me sounds like, I hope it's not, but it almost sounds like they're angling for he's not suspended. He's just hurt. He's going to take time away because he's re-injured, and they don't come out and address it. And honestly, man, this is a situation you can't not address. You just can't. You have to, in some form or fashion, this has to be righted. There has to be a public press release. This needs to be talked about. I know there's legal ramifications right now with the police involved. I'm sure there's like charges being pressed possibly. But the only way you don't publicly talk about this and say, hey, this person is getting punished in this way, this is happening with these guys, the only way you do not address that is if you flip it into an on-screen work. That's right. The only way.
So you alluded to that, and I think it's a good transition to it. I think back to the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, unsafe working conditions story we hear all over the place, where Bret Hart and him got into a scrum backstage, they pulled his hair, and Shawn Michaels took that clump of hair and threw it in the desk of Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon and said, these are unsafe working conditions, and left.
Yeah.
They eventually worked it out. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels hated each other, but they still were able to wrestle in the ring. Following the Montreal Screwjob, obviously they went their separate ways, but up until that moment, there was a lot of heat between the two of those guys at Survivor Series 97. Lost in the Screwjob was the match that they were able to put aside, whether it be Shawn being on drugs or Shawn being disrespectful and Bret saying he'll never put Shawn over. There's a lot to be said. I mean, we talked about the report when we did the CM Punk and the Hangman drama in the news. He said he was never going to put Hangman over, and we never got that report confirmed. But judging by how he's acting and how he called him an empty-headed motherfucker on a media scrum in front of everybody,
right?
Man, the other thing I want to say is that everyone's saying this is going to be good for ratings, and that remains to be seen, because right now, if you look at the media scrum, it's being viewed less than AEW Dark. So there's not that many views on it currently. If they're able to bridge this into a huge story and get the casual fans to come in, because we know the igniter for the Attitude Era was undoubtedly the Montreal Screwjob. You can go back and have revisionist history, but the Mr. McMahon character that developed out of that Bret Hart situation,
Bret Hart,
that became the launch point for the Attitude Era. And if they can do something like this, blurring the lines, and yes, they have to be able to get in the room and be adults and understand, let's make money off this. Yes, you hate each other. Put your fucking differences aside. You're a professional wrestler. Get in the ring. Now, if we see Kenny Omega versus CM Punk, there's a lot of heat on it. Now there's huge heat between Hangman and CM Punk. Imagine we get that program again.
If Punk wants to talk about being a veteran and doing things, if you want to build it bigger than just a little bingo hall in Reseda, and make money, put your money where your fucking mouth is, suck it up, own your faults, and for the Bucks, Omega and Hangman too, get in a room, both of you look at each other and be like, hey, we don't like each other, but if we're looking at the betterment of this company, there's a lot of money on the table here. I'm telling you right now, if this happens and say FTR joins Punk and we start seeing FTR and Punk feuding with Omega and the Bucks, all leading up to a massive Omega versus Punk. I almost want to see, because we've seen Hangman. I know again would be great just because of this heat, but Omega Punk, the match we've never seen with this level of heat behind what happened, and talk about it in the promos, like reference the backstage brawl, talk about it on BTE, dude. It would generate a lot of eyes. And the business, you want to talk about being a vet and being all about the business is built on that. I think of Matt Hardy, Lita, Edge stole Matt Hardy's girl.
Yep.
It was known, and they were willing to put that aside. You brought up Bret and Shawn. They got into fisticuffs in the back. They took it to the ring and made some super compelling feud, a very compelling feud, but they were also still throwing those shots in there, which elevated it. That's how you blur the lines of, is this real or not? When you take a very real life situation on the outside, bring it in, and then when Shawn drops a sunny days line, you're like, oh shit, was that planned? Or is he, that's what we need out of this. And if we don't get that out of this, someone's going to have to pay the pauper. Someone's going to have to answer for this situation. And I think it's going to be Punk.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Spirit of AEW, and you and I were going back in the group chat, it was a great conversation, which at the end of the day, this is good for podcasts and this is good for wrestling fans. I've been locked into the news on Twitter and on different sources all day, and you guys can stay locked into the Tavern. We're going to have the flagship, we're going to have the AEW wrap-up show, and across the debate. I think we're going to be talking about this for quite some time.
Yes.
But lost in all of this is the Spirit of AEW is built on the back of the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and Hangman Page to a lesser extent, but those four guys mostly, the Bucks, Kenny, and Cody. So the spirit of what they're doing, right, wrong, or indifferent, if you don't like the style, that's fine, but this was a movement. So Punk can talk about not being able to do things, and they've never headlined a WrestleMania, neither has he, by the way, or been anywhere or done anything about Hangman. No, he should have, I agree. Just taking shots. You know what? I want him to come at me at a media scrum. This is what has been built. And I don't want it to be sacrificed because some guy came in while it was established and started redecorating. Yes, of course, things need to change. We've talked about the booking leading up to All Out and even leading through Forbidden Door. It hasn't been great. It's been disjointed. And of course, the injuries, you can make excuses for it. MJF's been gone. But things need to get better. But I don't want it to be completely changed where guys like the Bucks and Kenny Omega are not even there anymore. It's all elite wrestling. No, that's not for you. If you're a Jim Cornette fan and you don't like these guys and you're hate watching it, that's fine. But we can't forget, for 3 years now, they've given us a second promotion in North America for the first time since WCW closed its doors. They've been creating banger wrestling that sets the bar higher than ever. We're getting 5-star matches strewn throughout every card that they wrestle on. So for Punk to come in and say that these guys haven't done anything, to bury Hangman on TV, where all elite wrestling is established on the backs of these guys, and he's benefiting from it. He got a payday from it. He hopped in when it was established. He didn't take the risk like Jericho took a risk. Jericho came in before it was established. Jericho,
he waited. He even said he sat back and wanted to see what they could do before he joined in.
Which is fair, but then you can't complain once you're here. And I understand
I get that.
Things need to change, though. I get it.
That's my pushback. I completely agree with you. I love the Bucks and Kenny. I think the whole belt collector angle when they were Uber Hills, Don Callis coming out, that's probably my favorite storyline. One of my top 3 storylines in AEW. I love those guys. But the thing with Punk, he came in, he should be bringing something to improve this. He should be allowed to offer pointers. And I do get the line. I know it was a very dickhead thing to say, the Reseda line. We're not in Reseda. You're acting like we're still in Reseda. I get that that's an asshole thing to say. But there is a little bit of truth in it. I'm not saying turn this company into WWE 2.0. Nobody wants to see that. I want to see something different. I want to see that freshness that the elite bring to this company. But at the same time, I do think there is some things that maybe that group of guys push back on, that if you were to implement certain little things, maybe a little more selling, maybe a little more storytelling, maybe a little more rules, that tag rope, just little foundational things that you would bring in, I think you would grab that 1.5 that's watching WWE that isn't watching AEW. I think you have to have a healthy balance of the chaos that we love about AEW and that indie vibe. And there is something to be said about learning from some of those vets about bringing in a little more structure just to pull in some of those casuals, because, AEW's kind of been locked in that 900,000 viewer range, and Raw's doing 2 million.
Right.
So it's like you're losing out on 1 million wrestling fans if we're just going by these archaic ways of dictating TV ratings.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think Punk, I don't want to be mistaken for not thinking he deserves a chance to give advice, but it's the way he's giving advice that bothers me.
Unprofessional. He's an asshole.
Do you think anyone's going to listen to him after this? You think Hangman's going to be like, oh, he's right. You know what? I definitely need to listen to Terry Funk. Instead of taking him aside in the back and having a conversation. And again, We're not there. We don't know if that was tried, but we only can judge Punk on his character that we've seen throughout history. We know that he has a difficult time being a nice guy. And that's not why people like to watch Punk. It kind of coincides with what we actually like about Punk, that he's this outlaw who rubs people the wrong way, but he's our guy because he
says what's on his mind. I like a little bit of that. I respect a guy who, I'm not going to tiptoe around shit. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel. I do connect to that. I got to be honest. I connect to people that are like that. But this is taking it to a whole nother level, man.
But done with the safety of the media behind you. Like, you knew Hangman and the Bucks weren't going to run in there. You should have had this exact conversation. Call Hangman an empty-headed fuck to his face in private.
Right.
Do it in private, not at the media scrum.
You're putting your business, you're airing your dirty laundry, which hurts the company. If you like this company, what you did is you put yourselves in a hole, and you made your CEO look like
incompetent.
A bitch.
Incompetent. Yeah. I completely agree with you. And I think both of us can, we're empathizing with the fact that he wants AEW to be better, but it's just about how he's a leader here. And no one, and I repeat, no one going forward, no matter what he says, no one's listening to him anymore because of the way he did that. He had an absolute outburst, eating a muffin while having this. People are going to look at him for this for the longest time, and talent were upset clearly, and rightfully so. So
Mindy's Bakery.
Here it is. They're closed on I think Thursdays. No, closed on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. I think they're only open Thursday through Sunday or something like that. But there's been hilarious reviews on there. I know Magic on Fig Night was mentioning it tonight. People were like, Mindy's Bakery is great, but have you heard about Scott? So people are leaving reviews. Wrestling fans are the best. They can be the best, I should say.
Ace, as we close in on wrapping this little discussion up, that we'll continue on all of our other shows, theturnbuckletavern.com. Check us out. But is he getting fired / released by this company, CM Punk that is, or does he quit? Like, what do you see happening here? What do you think? What's the end game of all this?
It's hard to say. I mean, if I had to put money on it, I would say he does leave eventually in the next 6 months. I don't think.
Do you think he leaves, or do you think he's forced out?
I'm going to say I think he's forced out. I think they're going to let him go for the betterment of the locker room, and I think they have to. And it sucks because eventually you run the risk of him showing back up in WWE, run by Triple H, and who knows what that will be, the ramifications and the ripple effect. But knee-jerk reaction, I think he's gone, and I think they're going to make sure he's gone because of what he did to the locker room.
Do you think Tony fears him going to WWE? I don't know. Do you think that could happen?
I mean, if he's bitter enough to do that, I mean, he has heat with Triple H just as much as he had with CM Punk, but Triple H, as we've seen, is willing to put his differences aside with anybody and everybody to bring them back and figure it out. I think there has to be a fear. You may just have, make him sit on the bench. Make him, keep him under contract, but leave him at home. Like, that may be what Tony does.
What do you think? Give me a percentage. What do you think the chances are that all parties involved, led by TK, can come together and make money off of this in an on-screen angle? What do you think the percentage of that happening is? I think it's 10%.
40. Oh wow, I was gonna give him 40%, just because I want to give them the credit for Punk's been in disputes with people. Him and Triple H worked a program together when there's a lot of truth to what they were saying to each other. It didn't come to fists, but I'm sure it probably could have. Some of the shit that Triple H said to him on air was rough, and they didn't fight each other. They got in the ring and they were professional. And once it's in the ring, it's professional. And that's what they need to do here. Then that really bothers me. I feel like he's really targeting on Hangman for whatever reason. May not like him because of the quote he had, but nothing that Hangman said in that promo was any worse than what Eddie Kingston said. It was almost the exact same promo, but I guess the difference would be he ran it by Punk. Again, we don't know. Like, did Eddie or did MJF, when he was taking personal shots about him not being a locker room guy, was it run by Punk beforehand and Hangman didn't because it was so not in alignment to his character?
Like, it seemed very tame to us as viewers, but maybe if you know the backstage heat of what's really going on between these guys, maybe those words cut a little deeper. Because, you know what I mean? Like,
the workers'
we don't
rights
feel
thing.
that, but The another question I have for you before we get out of here, since we're running all these hypotheticals and what's going to happen, do you think there's any chance that Punk is using that this is totally a work, but do you think there's any chance that you mentioned him being in issues with Triple H and putting it on screen, and do you think there's any chance that he is instigating all of this with the Elite and Hangman to rile them up and stir the pot, and thinking that this could be kind of a spark that those guys need, a little dose of reality in wrestling to kind of fire them up in his, like, no one else knows, but that's his mentality.
It's possible that, I mean, he seems, and again, this is my opinion, not everybody's, he seems like an egotistical narcissist that is always doing what's right by CM Punk. And the funny part is he wants to abide by this punk rock lifestyle of just like do it yourself and DIY kind of doing. But I don't know. I think he's almost creating conflict to give him something to complain about, because I think that's when he's most comfortable. And I think with AEW being this all friends wrestling and everyone was like all family, that's what they had said the locker room was prior to him coming. It seems like he's the issue. And that's why I still think that they have to get rid of him after what they did here, because Eddie Kingston got suspended for lightly slapping Sammy Guevara. What do you do when someone's biting somebody and throwing a chair and risking, at the end of the day, the Bucks are a cornerstone and they're EVPs. This is a precedent-setting moment for Tony Khan. Whether he knows it or not, there's a lot of pressure on how this is handled. People talk about groundbreaking moments. This will establish how things are handled from the jump. And if he sides with Punk, the ramifications could be huge. It's like you're going to be losing upwards of 60% or more of the locker room just to support Punk. Is that worth it in his mind?
The last thing I'll say is I think he will be fired. But you're talking about, Eddie slapped somebody, got suspended. There's a story of the Dallas Cowboys in the early 90s that I always think about in this situation. One of the lower 53 men on the team fell asleep during a team meeting. Jimmy Johnson walks up to him and shit cans him, fires him on the spot. After that guy walks out of the meeting room, Jimmy Johnson walks up and shakes Emmitt Smith to wake him up. All is not equal. The money guys, the top guys get away with more. That's just the way it is. Punk, I don't think it's right, but I think that's the way. Tony's an NFL guy. That's kind of you're not going to cut Joe Burrows. But if you're a guy on the special teams and you fuck up, you're getting cut. All is not fair in love and war type of thing. Like, Punk isn't going to be held to a standard like the guys on the bottom half of the card. Not to say Eddie's on the bottom half, but you know what I'm saying.
No, I agree. But what happens if they refuse to take the field? That may be where you're at this point.
That's true.
They may refuse to even get in the ring. And everyone said what they said for the Montreal Screwjob and said they're not showing up for work the next day. The only person that didn't show up was Mick Foley, and everyone else kind of backed off their word because it's their career, it's their livelihood, and where else are they going?
Right.
This is where they've established. So, I mean, this is a groundbreaking, precedent-setting moment for Tony Khan, for the talent, everybody involved. And I guess we just have to see where it goes, because by the time tomorrow morning comes, we all open our eyes and check our phones, there's going to be more news that drops. It seems like they're hinting at something bigger, and we haven't even gotten all the details. We've gotten vague allusions to what's been going on, but I think some big fucking news is going to drop tomorrow.
Okay, last thing. Is CM Punk on this roster by next Dynamite? Not tomorrow, but a week from today, is he on this roster?
Yes, but I think it's going to be probably suspension or the injury thing that they're doing, and they're going to try to shake it out. They're going to strip him of the title, and probably as soon as tomorrow, they may just take the title off of him and try to create a buzz and just go from there. I mean, fuck, man, if you would have kept the title on Moxley, it would be much easier now. Now you have to do another interim champion and go from there again and deal with the whole mess. And that's kind of what we created here. If he actually got hurt and it's not a cover up, we're in for another 2 months of just disjointed booking because of what CM Punk did. You know,
guys, we're going to be covering this like crazy. I feel like we might be talking about who's the next champ. How are they going to handle this champion situation if Punk is stripped? There's a lot of in the news that we're probably going to be pumping out in the weeks to come, in the days to come. So stay locked on the Turnbuckle Tavern. Again, follow us, subscribe on our YouTube. We put a bunch of stuff out. If you go to theturnbuckletavern.com, you'll find all of our stuff. Please give us some shares, some likes, some love. We appreciate any support. Ace, any last thing? I mean, I think we covered it for a situation that is ever moving, ever changing. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Tune in tomorrow for the AEW wrap-up show, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, covering all things Dynamite and more of this situation. Hear Mike Belcaster's take on it and Tom's take on it, because everyone in the tavern and everyone in probably your life that are wrestling fans have different opinions on this, and it makes it a great time to be a wrestling fan, but it also kind of hurts my heart a little bit about what's been going on, because I feel a close kinship with AEW, and it feels like
same. We talked about that before we went live. Yeah. We love having things to talk about, obviously, having a podcast, but as a day one AEW fan, a little heartbroken that they're dealing with this shit. I just want good stories on my TV. But yeah, we'll see how it goes, man. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you next time. This is the Turnbuckle Tavern.